Let's take a look at Warframe, which received its native Switch 2 build back in March of this year. This version promises an increased resolution of 1080p with DLSS, targeting 60 FPS whilst increasing graphical fidelity much further than previously seen on a Nintendo handheld. First up, you can actually change some graphical settings on both Switch 1 and 2, with a few more exposed settings on the latter, meaning you can technically customize your experience to an extent. For all of these following comparisons, I've turned off film grain, motion blur, depth of field, and distortions just to get cleaner footage. So right off the bat with the default setups, the improvements are glaringly obvious. In terms of resolution, we go from a targeted 720p docked on the left, to a targeted full 1080p with DLSS on the right. You can definitely tell that DLSS is doing some heavy lifting here, and is working great for eliminating the jaggies that plagued the Switch 1 version throughout. And this is not even mentioning the addition of volumetric fog and lighting, added reflections that come with improved shaders, much higher resolution textures, sun shadows in docked mode specifically, and more. All of these improvements come together to make something that's honestly a pretty substantial upgrade over what came before, and all this whilst doubling the frame rate to 60 FPS. Being real here, I think the outdoor sections are the most improved out of any area I explored. Just the addition of volumetrics adds so much to the overall ambience of the scene, and really enhanced the environment. And all this isn't to say that the Switch 1's version looks visually bad or anything. On the contrary, I actually think what they achieved for it was pretty solid. And whilst I would have obviously loved to see 60 FPS over 30 FPS, I totally understand if it wasn't feasible on this level of hardware, especially in those bigger open world type areas you'll see a bit later. Anyways, the in-game cinematics are a great way to see the differences in action, like that hugely improved anti-aliasing and obviously the lighting too. So you get the general gist of the graphical improvements, but what about the frame rate? Does it actually hold up? Well, to get a baseline for the experience between them, here's some side-by-side running through a mission. But, as you can see, in said mission, and even in this busier area with NPCs, both are holding to their caps perfectly. Truthfully, there's not much to say here, and simply running and jumping around isn't what you'll be doing for most of the experience, so how is combat? Focusing on Switch 1 first up, it's pretty good actually. Across a few different missions, the worst I found was just a few frame time inconsistencies, which were extremely minor, but that's literally it. I do want to preface though, I am only testing the first few introductory areas as I've really only played the game for this video, so performance may change later on. There very well could be more intensive missions, but from what I experienced, it's both stable and smooth for a 30 FPS experience. Though I did have some trouble shooting, which don't get me wrong, probably a skill issue, but I do think the additional FPS bump to 60 FPS on Switch 2 helped me to aim a little easier at least. And speaking of Switch 2, here it is in the same type of scenarios. Once again, a pretty damn good experience overall keeping to its cap. However, there was a few cases of the console dropping a few frames, but it's nothing to be alarmed over. The vast majority of the time I spent in these missions was completely locked to 60 FPS. But Warframe doesn't only have these small corridor missions, but also more open sections where you can roam, kill enemies, and complete some quests. So flipping back to Switch 1 briefly for this comparison, we're going to be using the earliest open world area you unlock at the game. Here, we definitely see the lowest frame rate so far when we open the gate to this area, but it's just a brief blip before it quickly recovers. Generally, the console does actually suffer from more performance problems here, like extended sequences at 28 or 29 FPS in combat, which isn't too surprising, but I doubt you'd notice too much unless you're really sensitive to frame time inconsistencies. In my opinion, Switch 1 is absolutely fine for a casual audience, but you simply can't argue that Switch 2 is just noticeably better. And in this area, that's the case too. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the FPS is completely stable, as like with the original machine, you do see some drops here and there, but also like with the original machine, it's not too noticeable anyway because of how minor they are. Overall notes on performance, I was pretty impressed with how these both run at their defaults. However, as you saw before, you can change some graphical settings and are given a decent amount of control. But as we've seen, the default setup already performs quite well. And there's no 120 FPS mode or anything to push beyond the current FPS limit, so I'd probably just leave it myself, which is what I'd recommend. Though if you do experience any FPS issues in later game areas, which I couldn't test, those settings are there to be tweaked. Audio quality was also noted to have been improved, so take a listen and let me know down below if you can hear a difference. Average loading speeds have been reduced too. So in this little clip loading into Cetus, Switch 1 takes about 19.5 seconds, whereas Switch 2 takes nearly 15 seconds. So it's not a massive difference, but it is nice to see. And before we finish up, I just wanted to mention that this release does include full Joy-Con mouse mode support for those who want it. You just have to make sure to enable this setting here to activate it, which defaulted to off for me. Anyways, thank you all for watching as always. Make sure to subscribe if you want to continue to see videos like this. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers already, which is actually crazy. So thank you all for that. Bye!